Sorry? Oh. O Bhagavad Gita, by which Arjuna was illumined by Lord Krishna himself, and which was composed of 18 chapters within the Mahabharata by the ancient sage Vyasa. O Divine Mother, destroyer of rebirth, who showers the nectar of oneness upon us, O Bhagavad Gita, my affectionate mother, on thee I meditate. All the Upanishads are the cows, the milker is the cowherd boy Krishna, Arjuna is the calf, people of purified intellect are the drinkers, and the milk is the supreme nectar of the Gita. My salutations to the Lord, who is the source of supreme bliss, whose grace makes the mute eloquent and the crippled cross mountains. So we're coming to another famous shloka, one that we chant every day, multiple times. So, Nishkama Karma Yoga is what's being discussed again here, which is this renunciation not of effort, but renunciation of expectation of fruit. It's not renunciation of effort. And the Lord's been very precise in terms of teaching this, right? And helping us to understand why this is. This feeling that we've had is because of this avidya, because of this feeling of being separated and this feeling of missing something, being incomplete. And this feeling is very much a heart-centered feeling. So because of this feeling, this life feels amiss. Something's wrong with it, right? And which leads us to this notion that I'm doing something wrong, that I need to stop this, stop that, this is causing me to suffer, and that it's my action that's causing me to suffer, where what's being shared is it's the motive. It's deeper than the action itself, it's the motive that's been the difficulty. And we've been so wedded to the motive that we may find that it had been, up until some point, impossible for us to imagine some other motive other than I, me, mine. And so, but here the Lord's working with us very patiently to turn this around and to help us to understand why. And that's an important part of it, to help us to see why it's necessary to turn this life around and to motivate ourselves selflessly. So these two we closed with yesterday. Because you have let go of attachment to the fruits of your actions, so that's that detachment, you are ever content and have no dependencies. Though you appear to be doing things, we didn't move this, would you mind doing so? And adjust it. Though you appear to be doing things, karma, actually you're not the doer. So karma is indicated as a parenthetical. We'll discuss a little bit more, but karma is action, and karma is also reaction. Action and reaction are one. So when a thing is done, you can say the reaction to it is also done. Mm. It takes some time, perhaps, for it to appear, but actually in the mind, it'll appear immediately. Mm. So you lose it with someone, immediately the mind is colored with that. Immediately. So, and then later on something happens. But the effect of karma is just like that. So, and what's been binding us is we've been stuck in this wheel, like the hamster wheel, where we're constantly caught up in this doing and the reaction to the doing. And when the motive is I, me, mine, then that's the way it is. Which is why we've gotten into this concept also of non-doing, intentionally non-doing, because I don't want to do, is the same darn thing. It's the same wheel. Does that make sense? Does that resonate? You catch how that is? It's doership. It's doing. Non-doing is doing. That's that funny one from the shloka that we took a little time with. So, but now turn it around. Because you don't want anything for yourself, this is 21, and because you have control of your mind and ego, so they're under your control now, and you say, no, we're not doing that for this reason. No. Right? And it listens to you. Okay, you don't do. I want this, it will assert. No, you don't, dear. You don't know what's good for you. I love you, and therefore I'm saying no. This is some stage along the way of taking control of one's mind and ego, right? Yeah. Ego says, I need this. And the intellect by this point says, no, I do not need this. We're perfectly fine without it. And by the way, I see what will happen. If we do that, then the reaction comes too, and then it's a whole nother wheel. And how many more births are you going to cause me to have because I do what you want? So I'm tired of this wheel. And because you do not consider possessions as your own, which they're not, but we come to the place where we don't consider them as our own. We consider them as our own now, but they're not ours. Right? And look at how much energy we spend in the pursuit of. So because you do not consider possessions as your own, you are completely pure despite the actions of your body and mind, which move according to the forces of nature. So this is the point at which we really begin to understand what yoga is, because we are observing, but we're not bound to the actions. They're not my actions. That's the point. It's not. This body breathes on its own, does it not? Do you have to breathe it? Yeah, hunger comes on its own. If food is there, the body will eat on its own, won't it? So this I, me, mine stuff is just superfluous. It's just adding something that's not naturally there. And by the way, if food's not there, then the body won't eat, correct? Yeah. And so what's the problem?
Don't think of it.
Fasting day. We call it fasting. We say, yay, I'm going to fast today. So we move on, 22. Because you are content with what comes of its own accord. And when we back up in this way, we see that there's a natural movement, and it comes, and things come of their own accord. And because you envy no one, and because you have gone beyond the pairs of opposites and maintain your equanimity in success and failure, it doesn't mean you don't try. Again, this is something we can get stuck on. It doesn't mean you don't try. It doesn't mean that you don't have a positive, beneficial motive, but it means that you try. Ideally, the motive, of course, is for the benefit of all, right? Or as an offering to the Lord. Peace Pilgrim is such a beautiful example of that, because Peace Pilgrim had no motivation other than to bring peace. None whatsoever. So not self-centered motivation at all, right?
Right.
And she viewed that her actions would bring peace.
Yeah. They did.
But she didn't get upset when it didn't bear fruit immediately. So just a beautiful example of this Nishkama Karma Yoga attitude, this bhava. So beautiful inspiration and example for us in that way to say, what does that look like? It looks like having an ideal, working for the ideal, and really genuinely putting the energy into supporting the ideal and accepting what's offered along the way to support the mission, but not being wedded to it as, but I need this.
Yes.
So,
To let it unfold.
so working for something and needing something from it get divorced. And then the work is pure. Right? Then we're free to, okay, then we go ahead and give ourselves to it. We don't need something from it. We don't need a particular result. By the way, you do know the law of karma. And we come, the more we're detached from this whole cycle, the more we actually see what's happening here. And we do see the law of karma at work. And we do see karma coming, it's coming to the body and mind, but the body and mind that's absorbed in service for beneficial cause, to share the teachings of yoga, to whatever, to help people to grow food, so many opportunities, right? So to help people learn to meditate, right? Whatever it is, conflict resolution, anything where we step in and we say, I have skills, I have gifts, dear Lord, I offer them to you, I do my best, please support me in the mission, and we go, whatever it is, then the actions do bear fruit.
Right.
But if you don't have an expectation of it, then you can focus on the action instead of the fruit. They do bear fruit. But then you don't walk around saying, I did this either. Because there's a higher level of seeing. Oh.
So in this issue of anticipating the fruit or desiring the fruit, could that even be just an expectation of a thank you for doing something for another person?
Absolutely, dear. Yes. It is. It gets very, very subtle. It gets very subtle. And that's common. That's very common. You'll see it. You'll catch it. It's like at some point there's a feeling something's missing here, and if you take stock, you'll see, I was expecting to be thanked for it. Mm-hmm. Something like that. Oh.
Question. If you step back and things just show themselves for service, is that still considered service rendered before is causing the karma of more service, or is that not karma? When good opportunities to serve just show up in your life.
Yeah, this world is made of karma. There's always karma, but the karma doesn't stick to you at some point.
Oh, it does. It just is.
Right? If you pull your personal self-centered motive out of it, then the karma doesn't stick to you.
Yeah.
Because you've withdrawn yourself from the field, but you're not inhibiting the field either. You're not asserting and saying, I will not do this, I don't want to do this, any of that.
It just shows.
But Peace Pilgram in particular we bring up as an example because she shows such a zest for the cause, because the notion will come, well, then if I don't want anything, then it doesn't matter how much effort I put into it. Right? Then I'll just, go through life. It's okay.
Confused.
No, I mean, this will arise. This is why we're talking about it. It's not unusual at all to have that come up.
Yeah.
Say, well, if it doesn't make any difference what I do, then, because often hearing this, we might hear something like that.
So to withdraw from life, is that what you're saying that can happen?
Yeah.
Instead of taking it with the zest of opportunity.
The relationship is so deeply developed. Okay, so let's move on. Because you're content with what comes of its own accord. We're reading. because you have gone beyond the pairs of opposites and maintain your equanimity in success and failure, even though it appears you're doing things, you're not bound by your actions. It appears you're doing things because to someone standing back, this body is doing things. To you standing back, this body is doing things. Also. So it appears that you're doing things, but you're not bound by the actions at that point. When you let go of all attachments and experience liberation, your mind becomes absorbed in the truth. When you let go of all attachments and experience liberation, and liberation is this liberation from the wheel, or the liberation from the notion that I'm the doer, or the feeling that I'm the doer, or the feeling that I need something coming back from it. All of this would be said to be liberation. Then your mind becomes absorbed in the truth. It's a process, it's grace, but the mind really settles. This is what's being discussed. It settles. It becomes an instrument of, instead of something independent, trying to get its own aim, its own goal. And there's a funny thing about expectations. You know, Peace Pilgrim would say, I work for peace and I expect peace. And so you'd say, but that's an expectation that would cause her to suffer. But it's just wisdom speaking, because of working for peace, then peace will come.
Yeah. You don't deviate.
If you go into the kitchen to prepare a meal, then a meal will come.
So it's not the ego.
So I expect a meal later. Yeah, maybe about 10 a.m. But if something happens along the way, if the asteroid hits the kitchen, well, there's no meal. Sorry. But understanding the relationship between action and reaction, then one says, okay, virtuous action leads to virtuous result. Do I need the virtuous result? No, I don't. I just need the opportunity to serve.
Yes.
Just please, dear Lord, give me the opportunity to serve you. That's all I need. And the fruit will come. But I don't need the fruit, right? When that freedom is there, then you're really free to serve.
Yeah.
And then you don't have that expectation of something coming back for the service. And when you, oh my God, what a relief when you finally get past the expectation that somebody's got to say thank you.
Oh my gosh.
Right? What a relief that is, Mantaji. That nobody has to say anything.
That's right.
We just do to do because we know it to be beneficial. Right? So great. And then the mind becomes absorbed in the truth, and the mind actually becomes an instrument of seeing the truth. It doesn't fight us anymore. So the mind becomes an instrument of unity and really is seeing the unity and the interconnectivity between the things. And by the way, it will see the fruit. It won't take credit for it. But it will be an instrument of seeing of the fruit. Whenever one does a beneficial action, whenever one engages in a beneficial action, there will always be beneficial fruit from it. If the action is selfless, if it has the intention of being for the good of someone, right? Then there will always be beneficial fruit. So if you feed someone who's hungry, then they will always receive benefit from it. And by the way, 9 times out of 10, somebody's going to say thank you if you don't expect it. If you do expect it, it's unlikely.
But what when people say thank you and you don't want them to say thank you? How do you do that graciously without...
Who doesn't want? It's the same person that wants.
So I don't expect the thanks. So when it comes, it's just
when it comes, you say, bless you.
Thank you.
Bless you. That's also a training.
It's not necessary.
When someone offers it,
necessary. The thank you isn't.
Why do you want to argue?
No, I don't.
That's a difficult one that you bring up.
It is.
Yeah, how to receive something that comes to you as a result. Well, it doesn't come to you, does it? It comes to God, doesn't it?
Yes. So,
because
yes.
God is who motivated you to engage in that beneficial action. And the fruit is God's fruit, isn't it?
Yes.
So thank you. And inside, you just offer it up.
It was. Yeah.
All right. Here you go, Lord. This is for you.
It was.
This is for you. You're the one that motivated this. You're the one that's been teaching me all the time. You're the one that's been guiding me to freedom.
Yes.
So I'm just following you, my Lord. And so when someone says, attaboy, you say, Lord, this is for you, attaboy.
There we go. Good. Thank you.
So that's the way to process it. It's a very good way to process. Then you're not caught up in that either.
Yeah.
Because it's natural. It will always happen.
It does.
But it's happening because this is the way it works here. So, beneficial action always has beneficial fruit. So the mind becomes absorbed in the truth, and everything you do becomes a yajna, a sacrifice. Sacrifice in the highest sense, an offering into the fire, this alchemical fire of converting whatever is being offered to divine. And whatever you do is yajna in this way. It's a puja. It's a real puja. Whatever is done then is a puja, because the offering is coming from the heart, it's to the heart. And which leads us to this, 24. This is the Om Brahma. Here we can chant together. Om Brahma Pranam Brahma Havir Brahmagno Brahmanutam Brahmevate Nagantaram Brahma Karma Samadhina. Which is saying, here translated, the offering itself is Brahman. So that which is offering, not just that which is offering, but that which is urging the offering, is Brahman, is the highest, the absolute. That which is offered is Brahman, the absolute. It's not mine, right? Here, I give you this cup. It's not my cup. So who's giving it?
Brahman.
And who's receiving it?
Brahman.
Brahman. So the offering itself is Brahman, the oblation is Brahman, which is offered by Brahman into the fire of
Brahman.
the fire of the digestive fire, really, seriously. Whose fire is it? Brahman. And it's a force of Brahman. It is. It's not my fire. I don't digest. I used to think that I did. That was an error. Because this digestive fire is in every being, isn't it? The plants have the digestive fire.
Yes.
So it's a universal fire. It's a universal force. Isn't that amazing? It's amazing. So, and the food itself, that plant is offered into the fire, and the plant is also.
Brahman.
Yeah, we're not just saying it. If you take a moment and catch it, it's all universal processes playing out. It's all Lord's nature.
In different forms.
In different forms. So
it seems like then the ego is just appropriating universal forces to a singular entity out of confusion.
yes, it's a very good. Intellectually, it's a good approach.
Because then that feeling comes. I feel like because if I don't reflect on that like that, and I'll chant the prayer, it does feel like I'm eating and I'm digesting, and I'll
Yes, it
even
does.
say that in language. I'll be like, "Oh, I'm not
It does.
digesting well today," and
It does.
if I don't catch it, I think
Yeah.
that actually is the case.
Yeah.
That's
Anyana, this not knowing, this active ignorance, you recognize as a feeling. In a very deep way, you recognize it as a feeling. And it's a feeling of I'm doing, I'm taking, I'm getting, I own, I have, you and me. It's that feeling. That feeling is not permanent. That feeling has been added, and that feeling can be removed. It can be, and that's really also relinquishing that feeling, seeing that feeling belongs to the body and mind too.
That's even a universal process.
Yeah, that's also a universal process. That feeling, that's also mother. That feeling is also owned by the one. So,
Wow.
oh, yeah. So you really are everything. Wow. Okay, so to put it all together, the offering itself is Brahman. This is what we're chanting, multiple times a day. The oblation is Brahman, which is offered by Brahman into the fire of Brahman, the one who sees nothing but Brahman. In all that he or she does, certainly realizes Brahman.
Right.
Here we'll read the commentary from Swami Venkatesananda. It's lovely. And these last two, to one who is devoid of attachment, who is liberated, whose mind is established in knowledge, who works for the sake of sacrifice, the whole action is dissolved. It's like the action itself, from you, it's dissolved. Yeah. Brahman is the oblation, Brahman is the clarified butter. By Brahman is the oblation poured into the fire, which is Brahman. Brahman verily shall be reached by him who always sees Brahman in action. Here's the commentary. The sage who is established in wisdom regards his whole life as a sacrifice. Yajna, sacrifice, is Vishnu, God. God sacrificed his unity, as it were, in the fire of diversity, creating infinite beings and imposing on himself the duty of preserving and redeeming them. Nothing can be outside the infinite God. Nothing can be apart from his being. This creation, too, is within him. All the activity that is experienced takes place within him. The only suitable analogy is the dream, in which the dreamer creates space, time, and material diversity within himself and views the phenomenon as if it were apart from the other dream objects, which derive their power, intelligence, and individuality from the dreamer himself. Hence, the world is often spoken of as God's dream or God's Leela. This knowledge should be sustained even in our waking state of consciousness. God is in all. God is the all. God is the all in all. The symbol of the Indian ritual of yajna, or haven, can be extended to include all actions. The performer of the action, the instrument used, the act itself, and the one to whom it is directed, all are God only. God, or the reality, is not a static existence, but a process, beginningless and endless. Thus, there's nothing unsacred in this universe. To live in the spirit is Brahma Karma Samadhi, or egoless participation in the will of God, described in verse 21 as doing mere bodily action without the least trace of egoistic notion, which creates isolation from the totality. The wise person sees that the bodily functions are already and always will be independent of the ego. All of the bodily functions never required the ego. that it was superfluous. It was laid over what was really happening. Right?
Yeah.
Oh. There's so as yogis we practice, and that sloka is actually something that can be practiced. I mean, it's pretty cool to contemplate in eating what's being eaten and who's eating it. It's a very cool contemplation. It is. To actually do it while eating. And you might just have a flash and a lot of tears might come.
Gratitude.
Just, you can't even put a word to them. But I remember from childhood a notion of God. Very early childhood, there was really a feeling of a reality, of God as a reality, and then living the life. I mean, this is this particular example, and then living the life that all of that seemed to fall away, and then coming back to a point of realization. Wait a second, this all is divine. This all is one acting through all of this. And these words came one day, Satchidananda, this is all God. And then reorienting the life and beginning to see it. And to be able to through the senses have the experience of touching that divine through the senses and recognizing that, oh my God, when I smell, who am I smelling? It's you. The one that for so long I took to be unreal. And I took this to be the real. Right? And then the realization about, wait, the reality of this is you. And when I touch you. And when I see you. My beloved. You're everywhere here.
Yes.
And we can say it. We can say it. Almost as if it were a memorization. We can say it. But to actually take the time in the day to experience it and experience the divinity of it and be aware of that sparkling. I was in conversation with somebody yesterday about seeing the beauty of God, and what comes is, God and beauty are one. And if you see God, in other words, if you can see the highest that's actually here, that appears to be a cup, but you can actually see what it is, even if it's for a moment, you get a flash, then the beauty of it, which doesn't seem to be in a cup. Thomas Merton had an experience, and he spoke of the experience, and he was in the city, Memphis, and how many people see God in Memphis? I guess if you take the right drug. So, but he'd been living it, and these are described as awakening experiences, but really the seeing is possible, because what's here is not what appears to be here. What's here is really divine, and it's everywhere we look. And so he describes seeing everyone in the city, everyone that was walking around, and all the buildings and all of this, as sparkling, as glowing of the one divine light. And so there's a practice in that. There's really a practice in it. So maybe when we chant the mantra today and we have our meal, we can take some opportunity to practice and reflect. Okay. So yes, please.
So related back to the selfless action.
Yes.
I perform these selfless actions. What if I'm meeting with resistance frustration, anger from the other party. There's disharmony and arguments in that. I know it's the right thing, but there's disharmony in the offering and the receiving, to the point that it makes me say, well, maybe my duty is something different. Why do I want to engage in this painful pursuit?
Sure.
When I could just say, oh, this isn't my duty, I can do something. So I guess the question is, how do you know if this is your duty or not, if there's so much resistance?
So for what purpose do you do it? And this is a question you have to ask. For what purpose do you do it? Is it a beneficial purpose? And who am I offering the fruit of it to?
Mm-hmm.
And this is motive and purpose. That question wants to be asked.
Mm-hmm.
And then you check in on it and see, is it really like this, or is there some expectation? And generally speaking, the people that are involved in the process, you're offering it to the highest. But if they're disturbed and then there's an opportunity there to step back and ask the question again above: what is the disturbance here? What is causing the disturbance? Am I not acting in the spirit that I'm really working to cultivate? Sometimes we'll try to force things that aren't. Again, ego is very persistent. And there's a lot of justification that comes in the inner world on why I'm doing this and why I'm doing that. So just go to Peace Pilgrim, for example, because we have some experience with this. So Peace Pilgrim never made a point of proselytizing or talking with anyone that didn't ask her a question first. She didn't. So that would invariably result in an argument or some discussion but that didn't prevent her from serving. It didn't prevent her from an inner prayer for the person that she would see that might be in a state of disharmony, that might really be caught up in things. It didn't prevent her from seeing them as the highest. So there's a question there about also, am I trying to do something that with this particular person, they're not ready for, they're not going to get benefit from. It will just look like an argument to them. Am I trying to force something, in other words? So it's a reasonable question to ask. Understand that you're in a business environment and you're asking these questions from a very practical standpoint. It leads to specific questions. Why is this person upset? Is there a way that I can do this and not trigger this reaction or this from this person?
Right. Well, I'm kind of fighting greed. That's the.
You don't need to fight
and
greed.
maybe that's a poor choice of
You don't
words,
need to
but
fight greed. Greed is a force of nature as well.
Mm-hmm.
Greed is also a force of nature. You don't need to fight greed. You're just in yourself. You're just in yourself. That's all. You want to transcend greed. Swami Shivananda, I'll share this. Here was Swami Shivananda's attitude about that. So everybody came into the ashram, and Swami Shivananda would always see the highest, but he wasn't immune from seeing what people were dealing with, what they were suffering from, what tendencies they had, and all of that. And so there's a story. Someone came up. There was someone in the ashram who was stealing things, and they came up to Swami Shivananda and said, "Such so and so is stealing," and he says, "That's what they do." He said, "I give, he takes." Mm-hmm. Like, so what? That's nature.
Wow. That's incredible.
That's nature. So, and it didn't prevent him from giving. It didn't prevent him from feeding him or anything like that. So you can say, I'm not ready for that. It's fine. It's a point of inspiration. It's a point to maybe help us look at something a little bit differently. See, you actually don't know the inner motives, and we superimpose our own motives on someone else, but we don't. We don't know why someone's taking. We don't need to know why someone's taking. We don't need to know why someone has this motivation, but clearly in the world, in the infinite world, these motivations exist. But the fact that those motivations exist shouldn't prevent you from purifying your own. And what happens is exactly this. Peace Pilgrim learned the secret. She learned that if I can find peace within and work for peace, then the fruit will be peace. And maybe not everyone will experience it right away, and that's okay. So, but in time, over time, then more and more, as we go through the process ourselves, then more and more we discover transformation happening around us. It's always a very good question. This has to come down to that. It has to come down to something practical that we can carry into our lives.
There's just this tendency to want to say, oh, this isn't my duty. Then if it's too painful, I'll just do something else.
Yeah, which you, when you inquire, I'm sorry, but you come up with the answer, well, that's ego too, isn't it? So then the question is, well, is it really my duty? Is it, and you have to ask God that question. You have to ask inside. You'll receive guidance if you allow for receptive silence. You'll see, yeah, it is. I'm just not liking it because I don't like the fruit. Right? And the fruit in this case is this person doing whatever it is. I don't like that. Why don't I like that? And who doesn't like that? It's just a really good inquiry, right? Because you'll very quickly see, it's the mental tendencies. And it's the desire for a reward or to hear a particular word or something like that. And then don't be down on yourself, just see it. Well, I don't want that. Right? Just because I don't like doing something. I will tell you, for the last 10 years, everything I was asked to do, initially I didn't like it. And I always used to run away from it. That was quite a shift. Which I can take no credit for. So now I revel in it. I laugh about it. I say, yeah, I don't like to walk. I don't like to do this. I don't like to do that. So, but I love you, dear Lord, and I'm very grateful for all of these opportunities to be free of being ruled by this feeling that I like something or I don't like something. Mm-hmm. Because that used to be the thing, right? I like it, so I'll do it. I don't like it, so I won't do it. Mm-hmm. And that's when we're caught up in this fruit and the expectations, and then we're like a trained monkey at that point. We do because it feels good. We don't do because it doesn't feel good. And we're the trainer, too. The intellect takes on the role of the trainer. So, dear Lord, you take over that role, please. Okay. Final prayers, page 174. Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivarnam Orvai Rukameva Bandhanam Mritor Mokshiyamam Mritat Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivarnam Orvai Rukameva Bandhanam Mritor Mokshiyamam Mritat Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivarnam Orvai Rukameva Bandhanam Mritor Mokshiyamam Mritat Om Sarvesham Swastir Bhavatu Sarvesham Shantir Bhavatu Sarvesham Purnam Bhavatu Sarvesham Mangalam Bhavatu Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha Sarve Shantu Niramaya Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Makashi Dukhabha Bhave Asatoma Satgamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mritorma Mritam Gamaya Om Purnamida Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudashyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Adorable Lord of mercy and love, salutations and prostrations unto thee. Thou art omnipresent, omnipotent, and omniscient. Thou art Satchidananda. Thou art existence, knowledge, and bliss absolute. Thou art the indweller of all beings. Grant us an understanding heart, equal vision, balanced mind, faith, devotion, and wisdom. Grant us inner spiritual strength to resist temptation and to control the mind. Free us from egoism, lust, anger, greed, hatred, and jealousy. Fill our hearts with divine virtues. Let us behold thee in all of these names and forms. Let us serve thee in all of these names and forms. Let us ever remember thee. Let us ever sing thy glories. Let thy name be ever on our lips. Let us abide in thee forever and ever. Humble Satguru Shivananda Maharaj Ki Jai. And for all of the saints and sages of all the traditions.
Jai.
Okay, let's stand for our tea.